Start where we do always, with the United States of America, and another incredibly significant week in the life of Donald Trump and documents and the FBI, because FBI agents have found dozens of empty folders marked as classified during a search of Donald Trump's Florida home last month. We have now got some detail, that detail that we were missing, as to exactly what they found, or not exactly what they found, but the nature of what they found and how many top secret documents they found. Donald Trump, of course, says that his handling of classified documents has been perfectly above board and denies any wrongdoing. We'll get to that and the claim that he's making about declassification in a sec. Let's get the latest on this then with Anna Mancuso, who is a political analyst for Renew America. Always like speaking to you, Anna. Welcome to Talk TV. Nice to chat to you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Darryl. How are you?
Good. I'm really, really well. And I really like speaking to you, Anna, at the end of significant weeks for Donald Trump and his relationship with the FBI. And we find ourselves at another one. What did we learn this week about these documents that were retrieved from Donald Trump's Florida retreat?
We found that there were classified documents. There were folders with missing classified information. There were folders that were labeled that you were supposed to return it to a secretary or to a military aide. And there was also a lot of other confidential classified materials. In fact, some of the people that were involved in the search were unable and had to get special clearance because their clearance level wasn't high enough to be able to see the documents in which was being found. It's also important to note that Donald Trump had said that he had actually declassified this information. And then when it happened, after the Mar-a-Lago search took place, he went on to Truth Social after the DOJ revealed everything that they found and said that, in fact, he didn't even have it. So did you not have it? Did you declassify it? It's like he's trying to be Schrodinger's cat in this situation. And it's just continually amazing that he will backpedal and gaslight his supporters.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that in a sec. Put a pin in that, because I'm fascinated by the declassification process, how that works, and how Donald Trump can claim that he declassified these documents. Just take us into the nature of what we're talking about here. What is the difference between top secret, and classified documents?
I'm afraid my clearance level doesn't guarantee me the ability to give you a full preview on that.
Fair
but as you move up in clearance level, you have to have a certain level of clearance level to be able to handle those documents. And those documents that he had at Mar-a-Lago are not something that just are packed up with photos and golf balls and whatever other things he left the White House with.
Yes, right. That's key, isn't it? Where these documents were found, because they weren't collecting dust in the basement somewhere. A good stack of them were in his office, Mariana, which suggests that they were at his fingertips.
They were, and he was supposedly, it's important to know, he was supposedly to have turned over any documents that he had back in June, and his attorneys told DOJ that in fact they had turned it over and that they didn't have anything. And then the FBI was like, okay, well then what are all of these things that we just found last month in August? And so it's been this kind of, cat and mouse game of Trump wanting to keep these classified documents, which are not his. They do not belong to him. He needs to return them to the United States of America. That is the rightful owner of these documents.
Okay, and just on the issue of these documents, of what these documents are, obviously we don't know that, and neither of us know the detail of what's actually in these documents. But what does sort of top secret and classified allude to those documents being?
It can allude to anything from intelligence information to different types of things that are happening within the military. These are things that are not meant for your eyes, my eyes, and even an ex-president's eyes. They need to be returned to the United States of America, which is important to also note one more time that Donald Trump is not the president of the United States of America. It is Joe Biden who rightfully won the election in 2020.
So even as an ex-president, he isn't. His clearance then ends, does it, when he left office?
Unless he had declassified those materials, which he said that he did, but they were not declassified. He did not take the necessary steps. To declassify information takes years. It is not something that you just sign a piece of paper and say, okay, well, I've declassified this. It takes time for these things to be declassified, and he did not go through proper channels. These materials were not classified. They found folders, which I'm sure we've all seen that infamous photo of the folders on the floor of Mar-a-Lago that was taken taken by the DOJ, and it was then put up when they went through all of the special master hearing that they're looking for in the courts right now, which is Trump's attorneys are looking to find this.
There was also his safe as well. Donald Trump had complained about the FBI accessing his safe. I don't think we actually know, do we, whether or not documents were found in the safe.
I am not aware if they did find documents, no.
No, but Trump has complained that the FBI did search the safe. If I mean, I don't know, does that tell us anything, Marianne? I'm sort of digging around here, wondering if we can conclude anything from where these documents might have been. Is there anything that we can conclude from them being in a safe?
The only thing that we conclude regarding the information that was found in Mar-a-Lago by the FBI search was the fact that Donald Trump took classified information from the White House that is not his, and that now as he is using the FBI search to tell his supporters through Truth Social that in fact he is being politically persecuted in the United States of America, and he will continue to use this to put wind in his sails to try and run in 2024 for president.
Okay, and I know. You keep coming back to the point. It's the principle that matters here, and I understand that. I understand it's the principle. It doesn't matter where they were. It doesn't matter what he was doing with them. It doesn't matter that how they got there. The principle is that they were there and they shouldn't have been.
The principle of national security, Darryl. We have to be very clear about this. That whatever information is in those documents, again, I don't know. I don't have top secret clearance. But whatever is in those documents is a matter of national security, and it is not supposed to be in his possession. And again, people are saying that this is a witch hunt. This is not a witch hunt. This is a principle and a legal issue. And in fact, we have his attorneys that are not going into the courts saying that, in fact, he did declassify these and he did give everything back, because they would then be sanctioned for lying in court.
Right. I am, however, unfortunately going to have to ask you to speculate again with me, because I'm going to ask you another speculative question about the nature of how they got there, and the inventory that we got from the FBI shows sort of where they were and where they were found, and it points to the fact that they were intermixed, these documents, weren't they, with photos and newspaper clippings and clothes and gifts and other sort of items that he'd got from the White House. Does that suggest that? And I park him for a moment that it doesn't matter, he shouldn't have had the documents. Does that suggest, though, that these documents were, rather than being sort of carefully selected and removed from the White House because of their earning potential or the sort of the influence it gives Donald Trump over a foreign leader or whatever else, that they were probably caught up in what was an extremely chaotic exit from the White House, a man who was gripping onto power with his fingernails and ended up throwing some things into some boxes on the 20th of January?
I don't think that it was a chaotic exit. He knew he lost the election. He didn't want to admit that he lost. In fact, here we are almost headed into the midterms of 2022, and he has still not conceded his loss in 2020. When he left, he wanted to hold on to power. There was speculation that he was going to continue to run what was known as a shadow government in congruence with the Biden presidency. And that is the one reason why I would say he took these documents. If I had to speculate, my speculation was because he wanted to run a shadow government and continue to pretend that he is the president of the United States when he is in fact not.
Oh, that's very interesting. What would that have? So I suppose your point there is that those documents would have given him the information that he needed in order to sort of continue to act, as president in the background.
If we're going to speculate, it gives him the ability to pretend to be president. It gives him the ability to try to negotiate with other authoritarian leaders, such as Putin in Russia, to talk with his friends over in North Korea. At this point, it becomes limitless to the bounds of what he believed he had power by having these documents in his possession. Right.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. And by the way, when I say chaotic, I mean so chaotic for him, really. In so much as he was presumably. He was literally grabbing on, I would imagine, to the door frames. And being
he was. We were concerned at times that he was going to have to be walked out of the White House with the security, and we have never seen an unpeaceful transfer of power in this country. And so the thought of that happening in America in 2020 was the most terrifying thought, of having to have a president literally peeled out of the Oval Office because he couldn't come to grips with the fact that he lost an election.
Okay, take us into Trump's. Or the sort of part of the defence, Mariana, that he presents here, although of course it's chopped and changed slightly. But he says that he has declassified some of these documents. You point to that not being possible. Why? Can you take us into the sort of declassification process and why that wouldn't be possible for?
Well, here's the thing: it's not only that he says he declassified these things; he says he didn't even have them. So he either didn't have them, which then how did they end up in Mar-a-Lago? Or he had them and he said that he declassified. Either way, he's lying. And at this point, is trying to figure out what avenue is worse. Is it worse that he said he declassified stuff that he in fact didn't? Or is it worse that he was trying to hide them at Mar-a-Lago? And in fact, somebody from Mar-a-Lago tipped off the FBI and the DOJ and then led to the search of Mar-a-Lago. So it's like a really bizarre thing, but this is what Trump does. Trump literally plays both sides of the coin to figure out how he can gaslight the public to believing whatever story it is that suits him that day. And he's doing this again with the Mar-a-Lago search, and he will continue to do this probably until his final days.
You mentioned Truth Social there a few times, Mariana, which is Donald Trump's, not only Donald Trump's preferred choice, it's really the only available
It is the only choice for him.
In terms of communicating. How is Truth Social? Do you have Truth Social?
I do not. I cannot speak to that platform.
Right.
I only see what is on Truth Social, which makes its way to Twitter in the form of screenshots.
Right.
I prefer to spend my time on social media channels where I know that it is at some point steeped in truth and fact.
Yeah, fair point. Is it somewhere that you can go though? I mean, can you just download his platform? Can you? Or...
Yeah, anyone can log on. You have to give a phone number, and they have to be able to contact you back to send you a code, from my understanding. But I can tell you at this point in time, I've not found my way over there.
No. What do you know? Do you have any idea of what sort of numbers it's doing, or how inflamed? I mean, we're seeing it clearly gravitate to Twitter and to other platforms. But do you know how the platform does?
Well, what we're seeing right now is that anything goes when it comes to advertising, but they're actually having a problem because they haven't paid their webmaster, and they owe $1.6 million in back pay to the website for hosting and serving of that website. So it'll be interesting to see if this actually continues on, if this person's going to take a loss in terms of money, because they're not paying for it. I mean, but this is, again, similar to, just Trump in general. He has attorneys, he doesn't pay them, he racks up large bills, he doesn't pay them. He is the ultimate grifter.
Okay, Mariana, stick about. I want to talk to you about Joe Biden next, because in amongst all of this, as a backdrop of Donald Trump being investigated by the FBI, or having his home searched by the FBI and these documents being found, Joe Biden has given a speech about democracy and threats to democracy. We'll take a bit of a blow-by-blow pick through that speech and what it means. Anna Mancuso is with us on TalkTV. More next.
TalkTV is going to be the kind of channel that when you have sat there, as I do in this industry, as a journalist, and you think about what a channel should be, what is missing out there, people have given things a go. They've tried to say, look, this is where we're going to have common sense and real views and represent what ordinary people think. And it's never really happened. And actually, TalkTV has come along, and it absolutely is about to nail that very thing.
What was my biggest career moment? After spending about 25 years at Fleet Street, there's loads of stories I could tell you. But actually, I think I did an overnight show for Talk Radio in the early days, the night of the Brexit referendum. And that was actually quite a milestone because, of course, we started off thinking that Remain had won. And at 2:30, 3:15, after Nigel Farage had already said he'd lost, it turned out he hadn't lost. And it turned out we were leaving the European Union. So that was quite shocking.
Join me, Ian Collins, every day on TalkTV.
There is nothing we hate more than hypocrisy.
Discussing the big issues.
Why was it so hard to establish the deputy leader was at a meeting with her colleagues?
The callers.
Alan in Grimsby, Tracy in Burton-on-Trent. Dave, thank you very much.
Picking apart the big stuff.
This simply does not wash. Look who's back under the spotlight.
I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and this is TalkTV. I think my most memorable and proudest moment in journalism over all these years is actually being on air during the lockdowns, even when I had COVID myself. Over the last 2 years, getting people to tell their stories, not just about people who lost loved ones to COVID, but people who lost their fundamental freedoms, their children's schooling, their mental health, their physical health, their businesses, and giving people the chance to tell their stories about how it affected them.
someone's text here. Mary Anna Mancuso is with us as well. She's a political analyst, taking us through some of the big stories from America, or the big story from America, I suppose, this week. Someone's text Mary Anna. Just pick up this text. They've said, there's no name on it, but they said, are the confidential documents that Trump took home more or less of a national security risk than the emails on Hillary Clinton's private server that caused Republicans to demand that she be locked up? Oh, well, we can't quite hear you, Mariana. Sorry, start again. Sorry, we lost that at the start of your answer. Go again.
Okay, this is classic. This is a classic pivot specifically by conservatives. The minute you start talking about Trump and how he broke the law and has done something wrong, they want to turn and they want to point fingers at Hillary Clinton and her email servers. At this point in time, I will tell you that the national security implications of whatever was in those documents is absolutely terrifying to me, almost as much as watching Trump supporters storm the Capitol on January 6th and show the world how easy it is to possibly upend democracy in America.
Yeah, although I would probably argue from the text there that the way that they've described that and Republicans demanding that she be locked up for it, that there is a double standard from Republicans here, that they demanded Hillary Clinton be locked up for something that Donald Trump seems to have bettered.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And in 2016, Trump had it to the T. It was lock her up. That was the chant, lock her up. And at the very end, after he won his election in 2016, and he went to another rally, the crowd starts chanting, lock her up, lock her up. And his response to the crowd was, that was a really great phrase, wasn't it? He never had any intention. It was a good rally cry in the moment, and it helped give him the momentum he needed to get people to the polls to vote for Donald Trump, because many people couldn't stomach to vote for Hillary Clinton. Let's move on from that, Mariana, and talk about Joe Biden, because he has had a significant week as well. Not unconnected, of course. He gave an address in which he talked about the threat to democracy. A couple of interesting points in the speech that I'd like to go through with you, if that's all right. One of them that I got the sense that Joe Biden sort of took perhaps more of an aggressive tone towards Donald Trump and Trump supporters, the sort of MAGA Republicans, than he has previously. In fact, he sort of tried to not reference him as much as he could over the last couple of years. You get that sense, but he's gone pretty hard this time round. What's the sense in that for Joe Biden? Look, Joe Biden name-checked the former President Trump 3 times in that speech, and that was by no accident. That was intentional, and that was to give us a few things. It was to show us that Joe Biden's not backing down, that in fact this election, the midterm elections of 22, is not a referendum on the president. This, in fact, is a choice to save and preserve democracy. We see a lot of election deniers are running for office across the country, and if they win and end up in office, we're not just talking about ending up in Congress. They will end up in key positions which will have to oversee future elections, and that is extremely troubling. I don't care who you are. That is very troubling for our democracy. And for Joe Biden, he is taking a stand and planting a flag and saying this is the battle for the soul of America, and voters have a choice in November. And so when we heard him on Thursday give his speech, when he name-checked Trump 3 times in that speech, that was intentional. And he also referred to not every Republican being an extremist. Do you get the sense that this, I mean, you're one of them, I suppose, aren't you, Marianne? You're a prime example of that. Do you get the sense that from this speech that Donald Trump was, Joe Biden was sort of looking to win over those Republicans in the party who are as outraged as he is about Donald Trump's behaviour? If Joe Biden is looking for a re-election in 24 and wants to serve another 4 years as America's president, he will have to remind Biden Republicans who crossed over in 2020 and voted for him, why they voted for him. Because right now there's a lot of Biden Republicans out there who have heartburn because they thought when they were voting for Joe Biden that they were going to miraculously get some moderate Republican in the White House. That's not the fact. At the end of the day, the Biden Republicans need to remember why, in fact, they voted for Joe Biden. And it wasn't necessarily policy driven. It was because the thought of 4 more years of Donald Trump was terrifying. He's also, as well, Mariana, as you sort of alluded to, tried to appeal to the soul of the nation. And one of the things that we sort of discussed about Joe Biden in the sort of build-up to him becoming president was that he would try to be, he kind of was and would try to be healer in chief, that he was the guy that was going to bring a divided country back together. And I wonder if, even if the sort of Battle of the Soul for the Nation speech is well-intentioned, the reality is, as it always has been and will be whilst he's around, that Joe Biden governs in Donald Trump's America. Absolutely. I would completely agree that President Biden is currently governing in a portion of Donald Trump's America. He's having to kind of overcome that large shadow. He's dealing with a lot of ramifications that Donald Trump had put into play. When we talk about high inflation in America, people want to blame Joe Biden. But the truth of the matter was, if Donald Trump won 4 more years, this would have been his high inflation. People want to blame rising gas prices on Joe Biden. That's not what this is. What we are seeing is the ramifications of a global pandemic finally relenting and us having to deal with the aftermath. Food supply shortage, inflation, high gas prices, those things. It doesn't matter who is in the White House, but at the end of the day, it is easier for far-right extremists and Republican sycophants of Donald Trump to blame Joe Biden than it is to take responsibility for the fact that their president refused to lead in a moment when the nation needed a leader.
He said, I know your hearts, I know your history. He said, the American people, this is a nation that honours our Constitution. So, it's clear the tone that he's trying to invoke. It's clear the difference that he's trying to draw between, him and his party and Trump and his party, and those, in the country who are susceptible to believing or pushing the lie of the election in 2020. Does it work? Will it do anything? Or are we going to be sat here again in 2 years' time, Mariana, talking about all of the same themes and the dial having not really moved very much?
Darryl, that is an excellent question. And according to my Magic 8 Ball, it currently says outlook not so good. Now, what that means is that we're seeing that the Biden White House is working really hard to ensure that the November elections, the 22 midterms, do not yield a referendum on President Biden, but in fact, show the American electorate making a choice to make sure that democracy is upheld and the institutions remain intact to continue on forward. Now, it's also important to note here that when we look at the midterms, we have to admit a few things, right? We have to admit that there's high inflation in America. We have to admit that Biden's approval rating is tepid at best. Nevertheless, Biden is using this as an opportunity to show the American voters that they have a choice. They can either go and vote for the extreme right, or they can vote for people that are going to uphold democracy, and the choice is theirs come November. At this point in time, between you and I'm surprised the DNC hasn't cut an ad telling voters that, you know what, no one will ever know. And basically that means that it's your secret when you head into the booth and who you vote for.
That's very interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
People need a way out. Look, Republicans have a difficult time crossing over. The fact that so many Biden Republicans crossed over in 2020 to vote for Joe Biden is huge. And it is important to continue to woo that crowd, because I'm telling you, there are many now who still have a little bit of Democrat guilt, meaning that they feel guilty for voting for a Democrat in the White House and they don't know if they can do it again. And I'm telling you, as I sit here talking to you this morning, it is imperative that those Biden Republicans wake up and remember what they were fighting for in 2020 and know that the threat of Trump is not just Trump. It is now bigger than Trump, and Trumpism itself is alive and well in America, but we have the ability as voters to tamp it back and say no.
This was an election address as well in many ways, wasn't it, from Joe Biden, as we say, not just about the next election, whether Joe Biden would be part of it or not, but also the midterms that are on the horizon as well. And there are some people, some commentators, Mariana, are pointing to a missed opportunity, something of perhaps an open goal for Joe Biden, an issue that has energised Democrats and perhaps energised people around the Democrats who were looking for a home, and and even some Republicans who sort of fall a certain way on this issue, and that is Roe v. Wade. That is the issue of abortion, and that perhaps Joe Biden should have and could have made more of that issue as a sort of central pole around which he can build support for the Democrats.
Look, I think we're just getting started. I can tell you from things that I have seen of just random people that I've run into and conversations I've had, they've all said one thing when it comes to the Roe v. Wade ruling. They've said that Rovember is coming. And I have no doubt that we will see women turn out in droves, as well as other people who are looking to protect women's reproductive rights. At the end of the day, Joe Biden has to thread a needle. He's a politician, but we also have to remember that he's giving us a preview of what 2024 is going to look like. If it is him and Trump in 2024 and America gets a rerun of the 2020 election, Joe Biden has shown us, especially in his Thursday address, that he's not going to back down.
Just between you and I, Mariana, just in the comfort of just you and me. He's not going to, is he? Joe Biden can't possibly be on the ticket in 2024, can he?
Absolutely. Why can't he?
Because he's very old. He's a very old man. He needs a break.
Okay, Darryl. All right, here. Okay, just between you and I, let me just give you a little bit of a history lesson, all right?
Okay.
So right now, there's a lot of questions swirling around. Joe Biden's made it very clear he's going to run for re-election. However, the Democrats are like, oh, you're going to run for re-election. They have to renominate him to run again to be president. The last time in American history when a sitting president did not receive his party's nomination for re-election was Franklin Pierce from the 1800s.
Okay. But that suggests that he would put himself up and is a more likely path not that he recuses himself, given knowing that I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Would he? I don't know. Maybe he wouldn't then. I don't know.
No, he's not going to recuse himself. He will run for re-election.
Okay.
It will be the party's duty, if they do not want him to run, to not give him the nomination and to nominate someone else. But right now, the bench of possible Democrat contenders for president is looking a little sparse to me. I don't know what you're seeing on your side of the pond, but over here it looks a little sparse.
No, I that's exactly what we're seeing. We're not seeing very much at all, really, in terms of sort of people who are knocking on the door. And I suppose that that sense in the back of his mind, in the back of the Republicans' minds, that it remains perhaps the best option for keeping Donald Trump out of the White House is Joe Biden, even these years on. Listen, we're out of time, but really nice to talk to you. Thank you for being so generous with your time tonight. Appreciate it, Mariana Mancuso. Thank you so much.